Welcome to Buddhism Heartfelt, a place that spreads the Buddha's teachings with a compassionate heart and profound wisdom. The channel specializes in sharing gentle lectures imbued with the spirit of Zen and primitive Buddhism, helping you return to yourself, find peace in the midst of a tumultuous life. In this journey, we will explore a very essential topic: what the Buddha really taught about happiness, not fleeting happiness, but deep and lasting peace from within. Part 1. Happiness is not satisfaction. Buddha started from suffering. When we think of happiness, most of us imagine satisfaction. Something pleasant happens, a beautiful relationship, a delicious meal, a personal success. But the Buddha began his entire path to enlightenment not by seeking happiness, but by realizing the truth about suffering. And that's not because he was pessimistic, but because he was very realistic. To heal an illness, you have to realize that you are sick. No true awakening comes from ignoring the pain. The Buddha called this the first noble truth, the first of the four noble truths. He said, "Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, sickness is suffering, death is suffering, separation from what we love is suffering, finding what we hate is suffering, not getting what we want is suffering." These things are not strange. They are the very life we live every day. So why is talking about suffering the path to happiness? Because when we mistakenly believe that life will always make us happy, we will always be disappointed. When we understand that life is impermanent, unsatisfactory, and unattainable, we stop asking the world to make us happy and start looking within to find something more lasting. From there, peace has a chance to sprout. Imagine you are lost in a dense forest. If you don't know you're lost, you'll wander aimlessly. But when you admit, "I'm lost," that's the first step to finding a way out. Likewise, when the Buddha talks about suffering, it's not to make us despair, but to wake us up. The suffering the Buddha spoke of is not just physical pain, but also mental unease, the emptiness of having achieved everything, but still feeling like it's not enough, the confusion of seeing time pass by, but never having lived fully, the anxiety of knowing that you'll lose everything. The important question is, are we living with the illusion of happiness? Most people seek happiness by chasing after pleasant feelings and avoiding unpleasant feelings. But that's like trying to keep the water from rising. It's impossible. Life is always changing. And if we place our happiness in things that are not lasting, happiness will also drift away. The Buddha looked at this truth deeply and calmly, and he realized that suffering is not the enemy, it is the door to wisdom, compassion, and inner freedom. On the night of his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he saw clearly that happiness doesn't come from having or avoiding, but from ending all craving. That is, stopping clinging to things that can never bring us peace. Many people who hear this will wonder, if there is no desire, no longing, what is there to live for? The answer is, live with awareness, with the fullness of the present moment. That is not living passively, but living without depending on external events to find joy. He did not teach us to reject ordinary happiness, but he emphasized, do not trade peace of mind for a fleeting moment of comfort. Like a thirsty person who sees a mirage of water in the desert, the Buddha did not blame the man for chasing after the illusion, but gently taught him, "Look closely, it is not real." Only when we recognize the illusion can we find the real water. And that water is not far away. It is the stillness that is available in the mind when we are no longer swept away by desire, anger, and delusion. Part 2. Impermanence and the deception of sensual pleasure. After the Buddha pointed out that true happiness cannot be based on emotional satisfaction, he went on to teach a fundamental truth of all things: impermanence. Whatever arises must pass away. Nothing remains the same. And when we fail to see this, we live in the illusion that we can hold on to a pleasant state forever. Impermanence is not a philosophical view, but an observable reality. You can feel it in every breath, in the passing of the seasons, in the changing eyes of your loved ones, or in your own face every time you look in the mirror. So why is impermanence important to happiness? Because all pleasurable feelings are subject to impermanence. When we taste delicious food, that feeling does not last. When we achieve success, the initial joy fades. When we love someone, the sublimity will also change. And if we do not understand impermanence, we will suffer when everything changes, as if the world is betraying us. The Buddha called this suffering due to change. That is, the suffering when the things we love change. We are often lured by emotions, especially the feeling of pleasure. It makes us feel happy, but in fact it is just a temporary wave. Then there is emptiness, absence, fear of loss. And to compensate, we run after something new. Then we are disappointed. The cycle never stops. The Buddha did not condemn pleasure. He only pointed out the deception in relying on it as the source of true happiness. True happiness, according to his teachings, must be unconditioned, not dependent on any external circumstances. He once gave a very practical example. Someone asked, "Venerable Sir, why do I still feel uneasy when I get what I want?" He replied, "Because what I want is impermanent, the joy I get from it is also impermanent. When my mind holds on to something that is disintegrating, how can it be peaceful?" Imagine that you are holding a block of ice in your hand. At first, it is cool and pleasant, but if you hold on to it, it will melt, and your hand will start to get cold and numb. That is how pleasure works in life. It starts as pleasure, then it becomes attachment, and finally it becomes suffering. We do not suffer because of feelings. We suffer because we think that feelings are permanent. Therefore, the Buddha taught us not to run away from life, but to live in it with insight, to see clearly the nature of all things as impermanent, and from there to let go of blind attachment. He taught, "Whatever arises, ceases. Contemplate this, and you will be free." And in that freedom, when we no longer chase after pleasant feelings nor avoid unpleasant ones, a new kind of happiness begins to unfold, the profound peace of a mind that is no longer dependent. An ancient story tells of an occasion when Venerable Ananda was washing a towel for the Buddha. The towel was torn at the edge, and Ananda said, "This towel is old. Perhaps it should be replaced." The Buddha smiled and replied, "Nothing is old. It is only your mind that has not yet seen the nature of change from moment to moment. Old towels, old feelings, old people, old events, all change. But if we are mindful in each moment, we will not be overwhelmed by regret or anxiety. We will see a mysterious happiness existing in the very flow of impermanence. Imagine a person sitting by a river. They don't try to hold back the water. They don't blame it for flowing too fast. They just sit there, quietly observing, and in that non-effort, they find peace. That's why the Buddha taught, live as the observer, not as the one who holds on. The feeling of pleasure is real, but it is fleeting, and when we don't base our happiness on something that is fleeting, we begin to free ourselves from the never-ending chain of disappointments.
Part 3. Craving, the silent thief of happiness. In the Buddha's most profound teachings on suffering and the path to liberation, he points to a root cause that few people pay attention to: craving, tanha. If suffering is the disease, then craving is the hidden virus that causes it all. It is not war, not poverty, not other people that cause us to suffer. It is our own hidden cravings. Craving is not just material desire. It is the craving for feelings, fame, affection, existence, and also non-existence. The Buddha divided craving into 3 types. Lust for sensual pleasures, kama tanha, the craving for the 5 sense objects, form, sound, smell, taste, touch. Craving for existence, bhava tanha, the craving for existence, for becoming, for attaining a state. And vibhava tanha, craving for non-existence, for escape from the present state, for rejection of what is. They seem contradictory, but they are all manifestations of a mind that is not satisfied with the present. A person may be smiling, but inwardly he is waiting for something else. A person may be successful, but still yearning for a more perfect image. A person may be living in abundance, but still fearing loss. That is how craving operates, silently, continuously, and relentlessly. The danger of craving is that it disguises itself as a goal in life. Modern society calls it drive, ambition, desire for success. But the Buddha did not reject effort. He pointed out that when effort comes from inner lack, no matter how much we achieve, we still feel empty. A very famous example is the image of a dog gnawing on a dry bone. It thinks it is eating meat, but in fact it is swallowing its own blood. Likewise, humans think they are living in pleasure, but in fact their own desires are bleeding their souls. Craving makes us never know enough. It creates an illusion that, if I only have this, I will be happy. But when that comes, there is something more attractive, bigger. The enough keeps moving further and further away, and like someone chasing after the sun's shadow, we have never touched peace. In the Dharma Chakrapranda Sutta, the first sermon after the Buddha's enlightenment, he did not begin with nirvana or liberation, but spoke of the middle way, the path that avoids 2 extremes. One is indulging in sensual pleasures, the other is self-mortification. Both stem from extreme craving, either excessive desire or extreme hatred of the body and mind. And then the Buddha spoke of the path that leads to the end of craving, the Noble Eightfold Path. But before talking about medicine, we need to clearly see the poison operating in us. Desire is not noisy, but quietly dominates every action. Try to observe a normal day. When you see a beautiful item, do you feel like owning it? When you surf social networks, do you feel jealous of other people's lives? When someone does not treat you as expected, do you feel disappointed or angry? These are all traces of desire. It is not because you are bad, but because the mind is not clearly understood. And when we do not see desire, we are easily led by it, like a quiet but strong wind. However, the Buddha did not teach us to hate desire. He taught us to contemplate it with mindfulness and wisdom. When we clearly see the mind desiring, the desire will subside by itself. Like someone shining a light into a dark corner, darkness cannot exist under the light. One of the most beautiful teachings of the Buddha is, there is no fire like the fire of greed, no bondage like lust. So to be free from suffering, we must cut that bond of greed with awareness, with mindfulness every moment. When the mind is no longer pulled by what we want and pushed by what we don't want, when we accept the present moment as it is, then a kind of quiet happiness begins to sprout, not from something outside, but from letting go within.
Part 4. Happiness from letting go. Unconditional stillness. After pointing out that craving is the root cause of human suffering, the Buddha does not let us sink into despair. He continues to reveal a way out. Not to run away from life, nor to fight with oneself, but to let go. But this is not the kind of letting go of boredom or disappointment. This is a wise letting go, an act of liberation. People are often afraid of letting go. They think that letting go means loss. But the Buddha teaches the opposite. Letting go does not make you lose anything, but gives you back the complete freedom that you have forgotten. A famous saying in Buddhist scriptures is, not taking, not letting go, not holding on, the mind is calm like a clear lake. In fact, it is because we hold on to so much, fame, love, status, self-image, that our minds are always in a state of anxiety, fear of loss, fear of not achieving, fear of not having enough. Letting go here does not mean throwing everything away, but rather not letting the mind cling to anything as the source of happiness. Imagine you are meditating and a thought comes up, I need to do better, or I am not good enough, or I am afraid of rejection. These thoughts automatically arise from the unconscious. But if you are mindful, you just look at them and then gently let go. You do not have to argue with them, just let go, like someone opening their hands to let the wind pass. And in that very moment, true happiness begins to unfold. The Buddha used the image of a fire to describe the clinging mind. When there is clinging, the mind is like a fire clinging to wood, burning brightly but suffering because it has to rely on external fuel. When you let go, your mind returns to pure light, radiant and independent. Once someone asked the Buddha, "Lord, when I let go of everything, what do I have left?" He smiled and replied, "You have yourself." Letting go is the way home. When you are no longer pulled by future ambitions or past events, You are truly present with yourself in this moment, and only in this moment can true peace arise. There is a beautiful metaphor in Zen. A boat can only drift gently when it has dropped its anchor. Likewise, the mind is truly free only when it is no longer anchored to anything. No need to prove, no need to achieve, no need to please anyone. When you let go, you stop, and in that stopping, you see your own full nature. Happiness, as the Buddha taught, does not come from something outside, but from the absence of greed, hatred, and delusion. Letting go of these three things, we do not become a different person, but simply return to the calm, clear nature that is already present in each of us. He taught, "When we no longer possess anything, do not hold on, do not cling, we become the richest person in the world." It sounds paradoxical, but think again. Is a person who has a lot of wealth but is afraid of losing it really happier than a person who lives simply but is secure? Is a person who has a high position but is always afraid equal to an ordinary person who sleeps peacefully every night? The Buddha did not suggest that we renounce the world, but suggested that we let go in our hearts. Still live, still work, still love, but not depend on it. It is in this lesson of letting go that he points out the middle way, neither grasping nor denying, neither clinging nor running away, just mindfulness, seeing and letting go. An ancient practitioner once said, "It took me 30 years to learn one thing. Hold on, I suffer. Let go, I am free." Part 5. Mindfulness, light in the night of ignorance. After realizing that happiness lies not in grasping or clinging, the Buddha taught us the ultimate tool for overcoming suffering, mindfulness. That is, mindfulness combined with awareness. This is not some lofty meditative state reserved for Zen masters, but a quality of life that can be practiced every second of daily life. Mindfulness is knowing what is happening, while awareness is knowing what is happening. When we live without mindfulness, we are like people walking in the dark without a lamp, stumbling, fearful, and reacting unconsciously. But when the light of mindfulness is lit, our mind becomes clear as a mirror, not dragged by the past or the future. The Buddha taught, a person who is not mindful, even if he lives 100 years, is as good as dead. A person who lives a single day with mindfulness is truly alive. When the mind is mindful, you are no longer carried away by emotions. When anger arises, you know this is anger. When greed arises, you know this is greed. When anxiety arises, you see the mind is wavering. This very seeing is the first step to freedom of the mind. There is no need to force emotions to be extinguished. Just see clearly, and they will no longer dominate. Mindfulness does not come from theory. It comes from returning to the breath, the body, the mind, and each moment. When walking, know you're walking. When eating, know you're eating. When washing dishes, know you're washing dishes. It sounds simple, but it is these ordinary things that are the refuge of true happiness. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "The miracle is not walking on water, but walking on the ground with awareness." We do not need to climb mountains or meditate for hours to find peace. Just be fully present in what you are doing. At that moment, the mind stops and happiness smiles. Mindfulness also helps us see clearly the impermanent and impersonal nature of all phenomena. When we see the mind sad, we know it comes, then it goes. When we see the body tired, we know and accept it. There is no need to fight with reality, nor to run away. Peace lies in honestly being in touch with what is without adding labels, judgments, or desires. The mindful mind is like a loyal friend, always reminding you to return, not letting you get lost in the maze of thoughts and emotions. In the darkness of ignorance of habits and reflexes, the light of mindfulness is a lamp, not bright, but enough to light the way. A metaphor used a lot by the Buddha is the gatekeeper. The mindful mind is the gatekeeper of the castle of consciousness, knowing who comes in and out. Without mindfulness, the mind will let all the strangers, anger, desire, fear, come in and wreak havoc. But when we are mindful, we do not fight anyone. We simply see clearly and do not let ourselves be identified. There is an anecdote that when the Buddha was tested by Mara under the Bodhi tree, he did not fight. He sat still, looked straight at Mara and said, "I see you." Immediately, Mara disappeared. That is the power of the mindful mind, looking straight without being controlled. The mindful mind is also the foundation for cultivating love and understanding. When you are truly present with someone, listening to them without judgment, you are practicing compassion. When you eat mindfully, you are grateful for the food and grateful for the person who prepared it. When you breathe mindfully, you are in touch with life, a precious thing that we sometimes forget. True happiness is not having more. It is knowing that you are alive. And to know that you are alive, you must be fully present. That is the greatest gift that a mindful mind can give. Part 6. Compassion and Wisdom, the two arms of true happiness. If mindfulness is the light that illuminates the mind, then compassion, metta, and wisdom, panya, are the two strong arms that help us embrace life with understanding and love. The Buddha did not teach a cold happiness that is separate from the world. He taught a kind of happiness that is linked to an open heart and a mind that sees through nature. A person who is mindful but lacks compassion can become insensitive. Conversely, a person full of love but without wisdom is easily swept away by emotions. The Buddha taught, like the wings of an eagle, compassion and wisdom must flap together to fly across the ocean of birth and death. 1. Compassion is the foundation of connected happiness. Compassion is not just pity. It is the deep vibration of the heart when seeing others suffer and wishing them to be free from suffering. And the strange thing is, when you truly love others, you feel yourself healed. A person who lives selfishly, thinking only of himself, is always in a state of lack. But a person who lives with compassion, even if he does not have much wealth, has a treasure in his heart, the fullness of a love without attachment. The Buddha once compared compassion to light. The light of a lamp is not lost when it is lit for another lamp. Likewise, the more compassion spreads, the more open our hearts become and the deeper our happiness becomes. He taught the practice of the 4 immeasurables: loving kindness, metta, compassion, karuna, sympathetic joy, mudita, and equanimity, upekkha. These are 4 boundless qualities that take people away from ego and lead to deep peace, in which compassion is the wish for others to be happy, while compassion is the wish for them to be free from suffering. It is these 2 factors that help us see that happiness cannot be separated from community, from relationships. 2. Wisdom is the eye that sees the nature clearly. Wisdom, according to the Buddha, is not knowledge, not sharp reasoning. Wisdom is the direct understanding of the nature of things, seeing clearly impermanence, suffering, and non-self. A person full of love, but without wisdom, can easily get lost in emotions. Loving someone too much will make them suffer. Wanting to save someone too much will make them bound. Wisdom helps us love properly, not attached, not interfering, but understanding and accompanying. Someone asked the Buddha, "Is love the root of suffering?" He replied, "It is not love, but attachment in love that makes people suffer. It is wisdom that helps us separate love from possession, from the I who wants others to be as we want." Wisdom also helps us understand that everyone is suffering, even though they may hide it under a smile or success. When we have wisdom, we no longer blame anyone, but instead begin to understand and forgive, because everyone is struggling with their own karma. A Zen master once said, "Seeing someone angry, I know they are suffering. Seeing someone jealous, I know they are lacking. Seeing someone boasting, I know they are empty." Wisdom is like the sun shining into the darkness of ignorance of the mind. But to prevent that sun from burning us, we need the cool water of compassion. And to prevent compassion from becoming a blind emotion, we need the light of wisdom. True happiness is the harmony of these two elements. A person with compassion will open his heart to others. A person with wisdom will know his limits, know when to stop, when to continue. When both are combined, he becomes a light that illuminates himself and others. You can start right now. When you see someone hurting you, instead of reacting, breathe in and out. Reflect. That person is suffering too. When you see yourself angry, ask, which self is being hurt? When you see someone better than you, be happy for them. That is the practice of joy. And above all, be compassionate with yourself. Don't expect yourself to be perfect all the time. Love begins with accepting yourself with all your mistakes and unhealed pain. Wisdom is not about blaming yourself, but about seeing clearly and then gently letting go.
Part 7. A simple life and minimal desires, a solid foundation for peace. In a world full of turmoil and endless desire for consumption, the Buddhist teachings on a simple life and minimal desires, appicakata, ring like a bell of awakening. Unlike poverty or denial of life, minimal desires are a profound attitude towards life. Having few desires, knowing enough, and being satisfied with what is essential. The Buddha once said, "It is not the person with few possessions who is poor, but the person who never feels satisfied who is truly poor." On the contrary, the person who feels satisfied, even with only simple rice and vegetables, simple clothes, lives freely, without worrying about loss, without being tied down. Number 1. Why do people feel more insecure the more they have? Because when we possess too much, our mind will become worried, afraid of loss, afraid of not being as good as others, afraid of losing control. A big house makes you afraid of theft. A lot of money makes you afraid of bankruptcy. A high reputation makes you afraid of jealousy. It is the endless greed that makes people never truly feel at peace. The Buddha once told a story about a very rich man who could not sleep at night. Meanwhile, a poor man sleeping in the market snored like a drum. When asked why, the Buddha said, "A person who has a lot is not as good as a person who knows enough. A person who sleeps well is not because he is rich, but because his mind does not worry about keeping his possessions." Number 2. Minimal desire does not mean giving up all comforts. This is an important point to clarify. The Buddha did not teach everyone to live like a mendicant. For lay people, he advised living responsibly, doing honest business, having property, having a family, but not to become dependent. Wealth is a means, not a goal. The problem is not how much, but whether you are attached or not. You can ride a motorcycle, drive a car, or walk, but consider it a means of transport. Don't identify yourself with it. You can live in a bungalow or a villa, but if your heart is not controlled by possessions, you can still live peacefully like a monk in the middle of everyday life. Number 3, where does happiness come from? From wanting less and knowing enough. The Buddha taught that knowing enough is the greatest treasure of a practitioner. When you see that you have enough, you are no longer dragged into the endless race of society. You no longer compare yourself with others, no longer worry about others being better than you. And then, a space opens up in your heart where you can breathe, live, and feel life without being burdened by the pressure to achieve. Zen master Ajahn Chah once said, "When we no longer expect anything, we are no longer disappointed. When we no longer need to have more, we find life complete." Number 4, a simple lifestyle makes the mind easy to concentrate and the mind easy to arise. People who live with many conveniences are often easily disturbed. Many choices bring many distractions. Many responsibilities bring many worries. But people who live simply will easily keep their minds clear and gentle, like a calm lake. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha clearly stated, "A person with few desires, who knows enough, lives alone, has little contact, and is diligent in mindfulness, is a person close to nirvana." When you reduce your consumption, you not only help yourself to suffer less, but also help the environment, help the poor, and help future generations. A simple lifestyle is not only a path of practice, but also an act of compassion for all. Number 5, how to practice few desires in modern life. Contemplate the necessity before shopping. Do I really need it, or am I just being controlled by greed? Practice gratitude. Every meal, every piece of clothing, every day of life is precious. Slow down. Don't keep up with the pace of society. Allow yourself to stop, breathe, and enjoy every moment. Live simply but deeply. Few things, few needs, but rich in spiritual material. Read books, meditate, take care of your mind. The Buddha did not advise us to live in poverty, but to live richly in our hearts with contentment and gentleness. When you are no longer attracted by excessive needs, you'll discover that happiness is very close in every breath, every gesture, and every most ordinary moment. Part 8. Transforming Suffering from Wounds to Wisdom. Although we all want happiness, no one can avoid suffering. What is special is that the Buddha did not teach us to avoid suffering. He taught us to transform it. In the Buddhist view, suffering is not an enemy, but a great teacher, if we know how to listen and face it mindfully. Even the Buddha himself, the fully enlightened one, experienced very human wounds: the death of his mother at birth, the inner conflict about life, the abandonment of loved ones, and finally, illness, old age, and death. But what made him different was not the absence of suffering, but the way he saw suffering as a door to liberation. Number 1, do not deny, do not exaggerate. Most people either run away from suffering or get lost in it to the point of losing themselves. Those who run away seek temporary pleasures to forget. The person who is overwhelmed attaches that suffering to himself. I am a victim. I cannot overcome it. But the Buddha taught, not every emotion that comes is you. Observe it. Do not identify with it. When you suffer, breathe. Look at that suffering with the light of mindfulness. This is sadness. This is fear. This is loneliness. Just name the emotion and look deeply into its source. You have begun the healing process. Number 2, from awareness to understanding, then letting go. One of the most touching stories in the Sutta Pitaka is that of Kisa Gotami,
a woman who lost her child and went crazy with grief. She went to the Buddha, hoping to save her child. He said, "Go find a mustard seed from a house where no one has died, and I will save your child." She went around the village, but every house had a death. Finally, she returned. Her tears had dried. Her heart was calm. She sat down next to the Buddha and said, "I understand. No one can escape suffering. I will let myself go." And in that moment, her wisdom was opened. Suffering was no longer a burden, but a profound lesson in impermanence and letting go. Number 3. Suffering is an opportunity to practice the way. In the Four Noble Truths, after talking about suffering, dukkha, and origin, the cause of suffering, the Buddha did not stop there. He pointed out nirvana, the cessation of suffering, and the path leading to the cessation. Suffering is the soil in which we sow the seeds of awareness, compassion, and letting go. When you lose, you learn to not cling. When you are hurt, you learn to forgive. When you are lost, you learn to return to yourself. This is not idealizing suffering, but seeing its transformative power when accompanied by mindfulness and insight. Number 5. True happiness comes from a broken heart. Those who have suffered and overcome it mindfully will have a deeper, gentler, more humble heart. They no longer judge others easily. They are no longer arrogant in moments of joy. They know that life is impermanent and everyone is fighting silently. The Zen master Rumi once wrote, "The cracks are where the light enters." And the Buddha taught similarly. From suffering, one can be born with wisdom if one knows how to look deeply and not run away. So happiness doesn't come from having a life without hurt, but from knowing how to move through that hurt while keeping an open heart and clear vision.
Part 9. Happiness is a journey, not a destination. In the modern world, most of us are raised with the belief that when we achieve something, we will be happy. When we have a stable job, a dream house, an ideal lover, we will find peace. But the Buddha pointed out that happiness is not a destination, but a way to walk in each moment. One of his famous teachings is, "There is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path." Number 1. The Noble Eightfold Path, a step-by-step path, not a skip-and-go path. After his enlightenment, the Buddha did not tell people to sit down and be enlightened. He pointed out a specific, practical, step-by-step path. The Noble Eightfold Path. 8 factors that make up the journey to lasting happiness. Right view. Seeing correctly. Understanding impermanence, suffering, and non-self. Right thinking. Thinking right. Cultivating compassion, not being angry, not harming oneself or others. Right speech, speaking right. Loving words, truthfulness, not being double-tongued, not slandering. Right action, acting right. Not killing, not stealing, not committing adultery. Right livelihood, living right. Having an honest job, not causing harm to anyone. Right effort, making right effort. Diligently stopping evil, doing good, nurturing the mind. Right mindfulness, noticing rightly. Being aware in every moment, knowing what you are doing. Right concentration, concentrating rightly. Developing a deeply settled mind, leading to insight. This is not a checklist that we complete once, and then it is done. It is a continuous circle of nurturing. When right view develops, it supports thinking.
When speech is pure, it nourishes wholesome behavior. In this way, the whole of life becomes a living practice. Number 2, every step counts. No wasted moments. When we focus too much on our goals, we often forget the present. We sacrifice our time to earn money, our health to gain status, our present happiness to hope for a better future, and then we lose our own lives. The Buddha reminded us that one day of mindfulness is better than 100 years of ignorance. There is no need to wait until you are fully enlightened, no need to achieve something to be called spiritual success. Just today, you breathe mindfully, walk mindfully, speak truthfully, cultivate loving kindness. You are walking on the path to happiness. Number 3, don't compare, don't rush. Everyone has their own path. A common mistake of practitioners is to compare their journey with others. Seeing others meditate longer, understand the teachings more deeply, seem more pure, creates inferiority or jealousy. But the Buddha never taught to practice to be better than others. He taught each person should be a lamp unto himself. Happiness does not lie in speed, but in honesty and perseverance. Some people go fast, but break down halfway. Some people go slowly, but each step is sure and full of love. And that journey of awakening is liberation. Number 4, mindfulness turns every small thing into a treasure. When you drink a cup of tea mindfully, you are in contact with the whole universe, the earth, the water, the clouds, the farmer, the hands of the tea maker, and the miraculous life that is present. A small action like washing your hands, washing the dishes, making the bed, walking, if done with a mindful mind, will become a meditation practice, become nourishment for the body and mind. So don't wait until tomorrow to be happy. Live in the moment with full presence. Number 5, the journey of practice is never ending, but never tiring. On the Buddhist path, there is no place called reaching the finish line and stopping. But unlike the race in real life, where people are always tired from running, this path does not exhaust you, but makes you lighter with each step. You may stumble, you may forget, you may get angry, sad, but if you know how to turn back, know how to breathe, know how to continue, you are practicing. True happiness, according to the Buddhist teachings, is not a reward at the end of the path, but is each mindful step we take, every day, every moment. Part 10. Awakening. The ultimate happiness beyond birth and death. From the first part, we have been together on the journey of discovering happiness according to the Buddha's teachings. Not pleasure, not achieving something external, but letting go, being awake, and living in harmony with the Dharma. But above all these worldly joys, the Buddha spoke of a kind of ultimate happiness, that is Nibbana, a state of absolute freedom beyond all bonds, including birth and death. 1. Ultimate happiness does not come, nor does it go. Nirvana is not a place. It is not heaven, not a reward for good people. The Buddha described Nibbana as the complete cessation of greed, hatred, and delusion, the roots of suffering. He taught, Nirvana is the ultimate happiness, but not the kind of happiness that feels good, but the state of no longer wavering, no longer wanting, no longer clinging. This happiness is not conditioned. It is not given by anyone, nor determined by anything outside. It exists when the mind is free of all defilements, like the moon appearing when the clouds disappear. 2. The awakened person, still living in the world, but no longer belonging to it. After enlightenment, the Buddha still lived a normal life, walking barefoot, eating, teaching, interacting with people who suffered. But inside him, there was no longer any suffering to cling to. That is the image of a person who is in the world, but not dragged by the world. A person who eats rice, but is not attached to its delicious taste. A person who hears criticism, but his mind is not shaken. A person who is praised, but is not arrogant. That state, unmoved in the midst of a changing life, is a kind of unshakable happiness. 3. Nirvana is not far away. It is in the moment you let go. Many people think that nirvana is a distant goal. It takes countless lifetimes of practice to reach it. But the Buddha also taught that someone touches nirvana in every moment of awareness. When you are angry and you let go, you have touched nirvana. When you want to say hurtful words and stop, you have practiced the Noble Eightfold Path. When you sit and breathe in silence without expecting anything, you are in deep peace. Nirvana is not at the end of the road. It is where you truly stop. 4. Ultimate happiness is not the absence of pain, but rather the transcendence of the concept of pain. When the Buddha was alive, he was still sick, still talked badly about, still faced difficulties, but his mind was no longer hurt. That is the inner liberation from all bonds. He once said, "The common man is shot by 2 arrows. One is physical pain, the other is mental suffering. The enlightened one only receives the first arrow. The body may be in pain, but the mind is no longer suffering. That is inner freedom, a freedom greater than any form of happiness we have ever known." And 5. The journey to nirvana is the journey back to oneself. Don't think that enlightenment is becoming someone new, someone superior. In fact, enlightenment is returning to one's original pure self, where there is no longer a demanding ego, no longer an ego interfering in everything. When there is no longer I, mine, for me, everything becomes light, natural, profound. At that time, there is no need to do anything to feel enough. There is no need to prove anything to feel at peace. And that is ultimate happiness, total awakening. Thank you for joining Buddhism Here Felt on this journey to discover what the Buddha really taught about happiness. In a world that always invites us to go fast, achieve more, have more, the Buddha gently reminds us, happiness is not far away. It is here, in every breath, every step, and every gentle letting go from the awakened heart. If today you can stop for a moment, breathe slowly, look deeper into yourself, then that happiness has begun to bloom. We do not need to become someone else. We do not need to achieve anything great. Just live with compassion and mindfulness. Take each peaceful step, nurture wisdom in every simple thing. Then this life, no matter what, will become a land of peace. May you always dwell in deep peace, contentment, and steadfastness in the midst of a life full of change.